Okay, welcome everybody to another Thursday night shir on the Parsha, together with the Orach Chaim HaKadosh's explanation on the Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Bo. Bo, the word Bo, has two letters, Beis and Aleph. And we know there's something called gematria, which is the numerical value of each letter, pardon me. And the word Bo, the gematria, the numerical value of the word Bo is 3. The Beis is 2, Aleph is 1. You get a total of 3. And that's like a remez, it's a hint to the fact that they're the final 3 plagues, the final 3 makos that are in this week's parsha. You have Arbe, Choshech, and Makas Bechoros. You have locusts, darkness, and the death of the firstborn. Now, like I said in the past, there's a lot to go through, and you can technically open any Haggadah that you'd like and find myriad divrei Torah and ideas on these parshas, because everybody writes commentary on the Haggadah. But we have a little bit of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, a little bit of an insight that's a little different. It's a very unique thing about the last Makkah of Makas Bechoros. And we're going to see an idea, something very powerful that really is something we can carry with us everywhere we go, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing. So, as always, I'll share the screen so you can see the sources on the inside. If you want to grab Chumash, take that one. So we are looking at right now Parshas Bo, Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk. We'll start at the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph. Okay, Sefer Shmos, Parshas Bo, chapter 11. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, Od nega echad avi al Paro. I'm going to bring one more plague onto Paro, Ba'al Mitzrayim, and onto Egypt. Achrei chen, and afterwards, Yeshalach eschem mizeh. I'm going to send the Jewish people out of here. Keshalacho kala. They're going to be completely sent out. Gareshi eschem mizeh. They're going to throw you out. They're going to kick you out of here. They're going to be begging you to leave. Daber na be'aznei ha'am. And make sure you prepare for this. Ask the Jewish people, please. It's a very interesting language. God is begging almost. He's asking, please, daber na, please tell the people in the ears of the nation. The Yishalu, and they should ask Ishmei Esrei Ehu, each person from their neighbor, the Isha Mei Esrei Usa, and a woman from her neighbor, Klei Chesef Klei of gold objects and silver objects, gold and silver vessels. Now it's interesting, Rashi comments here that interestingly enough, the fact that Hashem is almost pleading with Moshe, saying, Moshe, please do me a favor. I need your help here. Make sure the Jewish people are going to their neighbors and asking for the gold and silver. Why is Hashem so adamant, so to speak, to have the Jewish people ask for things from the Egyptians? So says Rashi tells us over here that the way it worked was that Hashem had promised to Avraham Avinu that their Jewish nation in the bris bein habesarim, in the covenant of the parts, where Avraham Avinu had to cut up different animals and he had to walk between them, and Hashem made a covenant, he made a bris with Avraham there, saying that one of the things that came out was that the Jewish people would be servants. They will be servants in a foreign country, be'eretz lo lahem, begames hagayav sher ya'avodu dan anochi, and don't worry, Hashem, I will judge the nation that enslaves your children. And then Hashem ended off and said, V'achari kain, and afterwards, Yetu be'ruchush gadol, they're going to go out with tremendous wealth. So Hashem is at the end of the line here. He says, Moshe, this is it. This is the last plague, and then we're out of here. We're going. So I've kept my promise that I was going to punish the people that enslaved the Jewish nation. That, check, we got that one. But you know what Avraham Avinu is going to do to me? He's going to come and say, Hashem, you promised that my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren would come out of Egypt with great wealth. So where is it? Where's that wealth? So therefore, Hashem, so to speak, was worried about breaking that promise and tells Moshe, please, daber na, the language of na is a please. Please, Hashem, please, Moshe, go tell the people. They have to ask for the stuff. That way, I can keep my promise to Avraham Avinu. Okay, so that's the first idea. Vayiten Hashem eschein ha'am be'enei Mitzrayim. And sure enough, Hashem made the Jewish people look be favorable in the eyes of the Egyptians. Gama ish Moshe on a gadol me'od be'eretz Mitzrayim. Even Moshe himself was great in the land of Egypt. Be'enei avdei Paro, be'enei ha'am, in the eyes of the servants of Paro, in the eyes of the nation. Now here comes the last plague. Pasuk Dalet, chapter 11, verse 4. Vayomer Moshe, and Moshe says, Ko Amar Hashem. This is what Hashem is saying. Kachatzos halayla ani yotze b'toch Mitzrayim. At about midnight, I'm going to go amongst Egypt. And what's going to happen? Umeis kol b'char, every single firstborn is going to die. Be'eretz Mitzrayim. Mibachar Paro hayeshev al kiso, from the son, the firstborn son of Paro, who sits on his throne. Ad b'char hashevko, all the way to the firstborn child of a slave woman. Asher achar harechaim, that has nowhere to go but behind the millstone. B'chol b'char behem, and even firstborn animals died. This is the plague of Makas Bechoros, the death of the firstborn. Now the Orach Chaim HaKadosh asks a question. Really, all the commentaries, the Gemara, in fact, ask this question. Why does it say kachatzos halayla? About. The chaf here, generally translated, means around, towards. Here, even in the English, they say at the bottom, towards midnight. Why is it towards midnight? Why isn't it exactly at midnight? In fact, later on, the Torah tells us that when Hashem finally actually brought the plague of the firstborn, if I get the pasuk quickly for you, after we're commanded for the to eat the carbon Pesach, right here, Vayehi, right? You see, it's in chapter 12, Yud Beis, Parak Yud Beis, pasuk Chavtes. Rashi, the Torah says Vayehi, and it was Bachatzi halayla, at the exact moment of midnight. Okay, it was in the middle of the night. Bachatzi, in the half. The beis before a word, the beis prefix before a word means in or exactly at chatzos. God came and he struck down the firstborn. So why here does it say bachatzi when Hashem finally comes? It says bachatzi. It's exactly at midnight. Whereas earlier in our pasuk that we're analyzing right now, why does it say kachatzos, at around, somewhere around midnight? That is the common question that Chazal asked. And there's different explanations given, and the most famous one that it's given is that when Hashem was talking, or Moshe rather, was talking to Paro, so if he would tell Paro at exactly midnight, God is going to strike down the Jews, what's going to happen? It's going to be a terrible disaster, because midnight's going to come. According to Paro, midnight is going to be there. He's going to have his watch, and it's going to say exactly midnight. And see, the firstborn is still alive. Even if the firstborn die 5 minutes later, but Paro is going to say, look, on my watch, it's already midnight. God didn't come. And therefore, it's going to look bad for Hashem. Now, in our day and age, in our world, we can look at a watch and know exactly when midnight is. We can have an atomic clock. You can look it up online. You can do whatever you need to know exactly when midnight is. Whereas in Paro's time, there was no way to absolutely determine exactly midnight. So because it was impossible to determine the exact moment of midnight, so therefore Moshe said, I don't want there to be any slight disgrace to Hashem. And therefore he said, about midnight, around midnight, Hashem is going to come. It was not so specific, not so rigid. But Hashem knows exactly when midnight is. So later on in Parak Yud Beis, when it tells us that Hashem is going to come and says, Bachatzos, at exactly midnight, God came. Because God knows exactly what time midnight is. He doesn't need a watch. And therefore, the Torah is very careful over here to say, Kachatzos, Moshe used about midnight when talking to the Egyptians. Now, that is the common answer given. We're going to put the question on the side for a second. We're going to put that answer on the side, and we're going to, in a moment, turn to the Orach Chaim HaKadosh and see what he says. Let's just read the pasuk, the next pasuk, and make one more question, draw out one more question from that pasuk, which the Orach Chaim HaKadosh asks, and then we will take a look at the Orach Chaim himself. So the pasuk, the next pasuk says, "Umeis kol b'char be'eretz Mitzrayim," that every male firstborn is going to die, all the way from Paro, the child, Paro's firstborn son sitting on his throne, all the way till the maid servant's firstborn who's sitting behind the millstone, and even the firstborn animals. Okay, that is what's going to happen. Now, if God forbid somebody is in a car accident and dies, so we don't say, I mean, the way I said is that the person died, we say the person would die, but if we're describing what's happening or what's going to happen or what has happened, we'd say the person was killed in a car accident. Okay, now, killed is a harsh word, and I think that's why we use a more sensitive and more calm word, not such a violent word, I guess, and we say the word died. But the right word for someone, person A, taking the life of somebody else is not he died him, he killed him, or he will die, or he will, not that he will die, but rather he will kill him, or he killed him. And therefore, the question is, why, when it comes to Hashem killing the firstborn, why does it say they will die? Why does it say umeis kol bechar? Shouldn't it say v'harag or v'haragti kol bechar? I will kill every firstborn. We know that it was Hashem v'lo shaliach. Hashem himself came. There was no messengers. There was no angels. There was no intermediaries. God, in his own glory and presence, came to Egypt and struck every single firstborn that was there. And therefore, why is this word umeis being used? It's almost like they just died by themselves. Kind of an interesting word. Okay, that's the second question we're going to address. Now let's take a look at the Orach Chaim HaKadosh and see what he tells us. So the first question we had is, what's with the kachatzos? So says the Orach Chaim, Kvar dibru Rabboseinu Zal, our rabbis already taught us, the tam omro kachatzos, why it says kachatzos bechaf, with a chaf. That was what we said earlier. Says the Orach Chaim, ulai, maybe I'll give you a different reason. Sheyechavin od al derech amram zal b'pasuk, by yechalek aleihem kol halayla, aleim halayla. In Bereshis, we learned about a battle between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. And there was a certain individual by the name of Lot who was taken captive. Og came and told Abraham Avinu, Abraham, your nephew Lot has been taken captive. You need to go help him. So Abraham Avinu goes and he fights the 4 kings and he's victorious over them, and he redeems and he frees his nephew Lot. In that story, so to speak, in those events, the Torah uses the word vayechalek aleihem halayla, and it literally translates to they chased and they ran after them the entire night. What night was that? Ki leil tesvav ben Nisan haya. That was the 15th of Nisan. And Od Amru Zechron Levracha Ki Harigas Daled Malachim Sheharag Abraham Avda Kama Amunais Gam Haisa Melchama Gedayla V'Atzuma Urushuma B'Malchia Olam. And the Medrash says that it wasn't just a small battle that nobody heard of, that just us Jews have in our history book, so to speak. Not that the Torah is a history book, obviously it's far more than that, but we have it codified in our history. It's not just our thing. Rather, the Medrash says that this was an international incident. The entire world was aware of what Abraham had done. And everybody was aware. All the kings of the world. Those are very mighty kings. And it was nothing more than just Abraham and his Eved Eliezer that were able to accomplish and wipe out those kings. So we see 2 things. Firstly, this happened on the 15th of Nisan, and everybody knew about it. It was an international incident, the fact that Abraham was able to defeat the 4 kings. Lazet Sayin Lo Hazman. This is why Moshe Rabbeinu came to Paro and said, Va'amar lo kachatzos halayla. This chaf here doesn't mean about chatzos. The chaf is what's called a chaf hadimyon. Chaf hadimyon is the chaf that is supposed to be as an example to something. It's referring to the famous chatzos halayla. Moshe said Hashem is going to strike down those firstborn sons, just like that other famous Chatzos Laila. What was that other famous Chatzos Laila? It was the same thing that's going to happen on this night many years ago when Abraham fought against the 4 kings. So it's really a reference to that point in time. He's saying, Paro, you have in your history that our forefather Abraham fought the 4 kings and he won. And it was on this very night, that year. Now this time also, Kachatzos Halayla, Hashem is going to come and he's going to wipe out the firstborn. So that is the first piece of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, a very nice piece that gives a little bit more reference to what was going on in the conversation between Moshe and Paro. Now let's see to the second question. And in order to understand the answer as to why it says Umeis Kol Bechar, we need a little bit of an introduction. It says the Orach Chaim, Od Yesh L'Chol Adas. You need to know. Ki Kol Mekar Yish'af Lamino V'Yish Avena. All things have a natural tendency to be drawn to similar and to like items. This is really what it means, that our neshama and the Torah are naturally drawn to each other, and our neshamas from one person to another, our souls are all drawn to each other. The reason is because our soul comes from the same place. All our souls, all Jewish souls come from the same place, from Hashem. And therefore, we have a natural draw to other people. And similarly to the Torah, we have a natural draw to the Torah and to mitzvos because that's part and parcel of our neshama. Those are similar, those are like items. Righteous and great people were even able to visibly see a person's good deeds versus a person's negative deeds and see what was going on with this person's neshama, because they were able to visualize and see these things. So, for example, there's a very famous story where this young man came to the Stipler, and the Reb Chaim Kanievsky's father, Reb Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, and he came to him and he said, "Rabbi, I want a bracha for a shidduch to get married. Give me a bracha." So the Stipler said, "Come back in a week." And the young man left. Oh, I'm afraid he said, "Who's your rabbi? What's your rabbi's name?" He took the rabbi's name and said, "Come back in a week." Okay, the boy didn't know what to say, what to think about it. Why is he pushing him off? Fine, okay. The rabbi said, the Stipler said, "Come back in a week." He'll come back in a week. The Stipler called his rabbi and he says, "Rabbi, you have a big problem on your hands." "What do you mean?" "I just got a visit from this and this young man." He said, "Yeah, he's a wonderful boy. He learns very well. He's a good person. You have a good shidduch for him." He says, "He cannot get married." "Why not?" "What's wrong? He's such a young, wonderful person." "I can see that he's not Jewish. He's not Jewish. He doesn't realize it, but he's not Jewish." The rabbi says, "Stipler, he's grown up. He's a very religious young man." He says, "I'm telling you, go investigate and you'll figure it out." So the rabbi investigated, and sure enough, he found out that somewhere along the lines there was a conversion that wasn't 100%, and therefore he was actually not Jewish. And therefore they told his student, and the student went and he became. He went through the process of conversion. He was already ahead of the game because he had been spending his life as a Jew and doing everything as a religious Jew should. So he didn't have to go through the long process. It was a short process for him. So then he came back to the Stipler Gaon. The Stipler said, finally, now I can give you a blessing for a good shidduch that you should get married. So great people were able to detect and sense these kinds of things. So says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, that he tells us as this, and he says, "Kemaisa even hasho'eves lebarzel." This is similar to a stone that draws metal. Now, in the language of earlier sources, the word for a magnet was called an even hasho'eves. We all know what a magnet is. And why did God create this concept of magnetism? Is that we should see that you have something metal. If I were to tell you if you could imagine, almost erase from your head the concept of magnets, and I tell you that your soul is naturally drawn to mine, you'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What does that mean, drawn? What does one thing draw to the other? There's nothing connecting us. How can they be drawn to each other?" But through a magnet, we now understand that we're drawn. We can see things that the magnet sees the metal. It doesn't see it physically, but it can sense that it's there and it pulls the metal to it. It's the same thing with our neshama. So therefore, says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, this is what it means when Hashem says that they just died. Not that Hashem had to kill them per se, but what happened rather, Pirush ki be'emtsaos she'ani over b'tov Mitzrayim, from the very fact that I, Hashem, myself, am going to Egypt, v'zeh yamus me'atzmo. This on their own will cause them to die, because the souls that are within these Bechoros, these firstborn Egyptians, their soul, whatever spirituality is there, is going to just automatically magnetize to me. It's going to be sucked and it's going to go connect right to me. And right away, they're just going to drop dead. There's no killing per se. The natural tendency of a soul is to be drawn to its creator. And because of the proximity of Hashem to these people, their neshama just disappeared. It straight went out. And therefore, that's how they died. And that's why it says the word mace. So says the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, a very, very powerful thing. And he says that the first thing he says is telling us how we are all connected, how we're all related. It's not just that we know each other and we have a relationship based on similar experiences or anything like that. Rather, at the very root of who we are is our neshama, is our soul. And that soul desires to be connected to other souls and obviously desires to be connected to Hashem. So if I were to take you to a car dealership and I tell you, you got to talk to the car salesman, and he's going to tell you how a car works, just so you should have basic understanding of how to function with the car. So you got to listen a little bit. Okay, you don't need to know how all the gears work and how all the exhaust mechanisms work and how all the brake pads work. That's not so important. You got to know the right pedal is the gas, the left pedal is the brakes. You got to know how to shift gears. You got to know that you put gas in the tank, and you got to make sure that nothing's leaking, and the basic things that we just kind of just aware of, right? So now we have to be aware, says the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh, of our soul. What is our soul? This is our car. This is our vehicle that Hashem has given us to be in this world. What is the definition of how does our soul work? Where's the handbook for the soul? Says the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh, you should know many things about our soul, but for tonight we're going to talk on this. Your soul is something that automatically draws to spiritual things. It's automatically attracted to other spiritual things, whether it be another person, another human being, whether it be to Torah and mitzvos. Automatically we are drawn to them. The Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh continues to pull it out. It's going to take a little bit longer of a time, so we're not going to go through it all. But he says that when Hashem created the world and Adam Harishon sinned, what happened was there was like this explosion of spirituality that went all over the world. And I'm sure you've heard this term, nitzotzos. There are these sparks of spirituality that are all over the world. And it's our job to go and take those and gather those sparks of spirituality. That's why the Jewish people were sent into exile into many places, not into one location in one small area. Rather, it was exiled to places all around, all for the sake of being able to attract those sparks. How do we get them? What do we have to do? Nothing other than just being there. Our neshama, our soul is deeply connected and desires to connect to these things. It's like a magnet. It automatically is attracted and they will automatically come to us. As long as we are focusing on our neshama and connecting it to Hashem. So just to summarize, we had two questions that the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh pointed out to us. The first one, why does Moshe Rabbeinu say kachatzos halayla? The famous answer, because he had to be more vague when it came to human beings, not knowing exactly when midnight was, whereas Hashem said bachatzos because it was going to be exactly at midnight. And then the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh suggested to us that it was a reference. Moshe Rabbeinu was referencing the fight or the war between Avraham Avinu and the four kings and how he had wiped them out. And it was an international incident. Everybody knew about it. And Moshe was saying, Paro, you remember about Avraham Avinu that on the 15th of Nisan, he wiped out those four kings. So this night is going to be just like that night. The 15th of Nisan, there's going to be a total disaster over here. That was the first piece of the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh. And then this last piece, that the reason why it says Meis Kol Bechar, they didn't have to be killed, is by virtue of the fact that the proximity of Hashem being so close to them, that their spirituality that keeps a person alive automatically left these firstborns, and therefore by just naturally they just died. It was as if taking out I don't know exactly, I don't have a good muscle for that, but it was automatic. They just died right away without having to kill them. They just their spirituality automatically connected to Hashem, and therefore it says the word mace. And from that we can learn that our neshama has a deep desire and automatically connects to all spiritual things, and it's there just waiting for us to tap into. Thank you so much for coming. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yesh Rabbi.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see you.
I always think like with the magnet, like as you draw, as the magnet draws nearer to a piece of ferrous material, and that force grows stronger, so that it can be a kind of a like self-perpetuating. But the closer that you draw, the greater the intensity of the attraction.
Yes, exactly. In there's a very famous story, Arba Nichnasu Lepardes, that four great rabbis went to in this spiritual realm. This is not meant to be understood simply. They went to this orchard. It was Rabbi Akiva, Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, and Acher, Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya. So Rabbi Acher, he came out and he questioned Hashem and said that there must be two creators. He basically left the fold, essentially. So Rabbi Akiva went in and out with no problem. Ben Azai went in and he died, and Ben Zoma went, I think, lost his mind. So the Gemara says, Ben Azai, why did he die when he went in there? So the language of the Gemara is shehitzis b'meis, that his neshama sparked and he died. And the explanation that's brought down is because his neshama was so close to such awesome spirituality, it couldn't contain itself. It just had to connect, and it just left his body, and that's why he died. Not because if he did anything wrong, but just that proximity automatically made it such a strong connection that it left his body. That's like the idea you're saying, that the closer you get, the more powerful the connection is. Absolutely.
Yeah, and actually, it sounds like if we think about it, it actually, I guess, not always a good thing, or sometimes if there's that level of sometimes that level of intensity can be dangerous in some way. And
Yeah. That's part of that is the concept that Hashem told Moshe. Moshe said, "Let me see you." Hashem said, "Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai." You can't see me. No, not in this world. That's not for us to be here. That's the next world is when we connect directly to Hashem and our souls can handle it. But in this world, that's not what we're here for. You're right. It'd be dangerous for us.
Rabbi, it seems like you're saying that, we all know that like Nadav and Abihu and Moshe and Aaron, there was the kiss of Hashem was how their souls left their body.
Yeah.
That's like considered like a unique situation because they're very high souls. And here it sounds like we're hearing that all of the firstborns of Egypt were on that level.
Oh, that's an interesting point. That's an excellent point. I didn't think of that. Let me think of that for a minute before I respond. That's a great question. How do we reconcile the concept that we know that great people, Hashem was what gave them what's called a misa neshika, a kiss of death, which essentially is this idea that Hashem's proximity sent their neshama, took their neshama right out. And now we're saying the same thing for the firstborns of Mitzrayim, and it would seem that they almost got the good end of the deal, so to speak. Yeah, it's an interesting question. There is a piece, part of this Orach Chaim HaKadosh. I didn't read the whole thing, but part of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says that Umeis Kol Bachar, he comes around and he says that perhaps what it means is that the firstborn, just to formulate it properly, there was nothing left of their spirituality. It was totally consumed, and there was nothing left. So I don't know exactly what that means, but they're whether that means whatever neshama they had, was obliterated, and there was just nothing left to them, and that's what it means, mace. Whereas Moshe and people like that had the misa neshika, we wouldn't say that their neshama was obliterated; rather, it was just taken in by Hashem, so to speak. So that would be the difference, I guess, in that point, why the Orach Chaim HaKadosh puts that out there. It's an excellent point.
I suppose all those firstborn were kind of unwittingly, they wound up, being the ones who demonstrated, the ultimate power of Hashem in Egypt.
Yeah.
So I guess they didn't volunteer to do that, but indirectly, they
served a purpose in bringing, showing how powerful Hashem was. Yeah.
There's another classic ambiguity in that people found out who the firstborn was and who wasn't firstborn.
That's right. Yeah. That's another reason that why is it Hashem had to go by himself is because to send an angel wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Only Hashem can distinguish between who actually is the firstborn and who's not. That's right. It's also true. It brought into, it's like, oh, so that was the firstborn. Right, exactly.
I don't know if it was considered the firstborn from the father or the mother. I mean, for the mitzvah.
Right. It seems that it's from some midrashim, it seems like almost any permutation.
Oh, okay. So I guess you could have like two first, right? So
right.
You'd have,
right. Possible two firstborns.
Or I guess, yeah. Normally you'd have one, but
right.
Okay, yeah. Given the Egyptian lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
More than one.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. Okay, fantastic. Thank you everybody so much for coming. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and Hashem will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Be well.